The cold metal chair felt uncomfortable against Zextheri's broken shell. His once proud armor now showed deep cracks and burn marks. 3 months had passed since the war ended, but the alien commander still shook when he remembered what happened on Earth. Across the small table sat Investigator Veleneus. The council member's blue skin looked pale under the bright lights. His 4 eyes studied the damaged Kytherian warrior with concern. This was not the first time Veleneus had questioned survivors of failed invasions, but something about this case felt different. "Begin your report, Commander Zextheri," Veleneus said in a soft voice. His recording device hummed quietly on the table between them. Zextheri's compound eyes looked down at his clawed hands. They still trembled slightly. "You will not believe what I tell you," he said. His voice was rough and tired. "None of you will understand until it is too late." "Try me," Veles replied. He had heard many war stories before. Soldiers often exaggerated their defeats to save face. The Kytherian commander took a deep breath. "We thought Earth would be easy. Our scouts said the humans were weak. They had only been in space for a few hundred years. Their weapons looked simple. Their ships were slow and ugly compared to ours." Zextheri paused and looked up at the ceiling. The High Command called it a routine conquest. "They said we would be done in 1 day. Maybe 2 if the humans were stubborn." Veleneus nodded and made notes on his datapad. This sounded like a typical story so far. Overconfident military leaders often underestimated their enemies. "Tell me about the invasion," Veleus said. Zextheri's eyes focused on something far away. "We brought 7 battle fleets. Over 2 million warriors. The best ships in the Empire. We jumped into their system expecting to see fear. Instead, we found something else." "What did you find?" "The humans were waiting for us." This surprised Veleneus. His hand stopped writing. "Waiting? How could they know you were coming?" Zextheri made a sound that might have been laughter, but it held no joy. "That was our first mistake. We thought they were primitive. But they had been watching the stars for a long time. They saw our scout ships. They knew we were coming months before we arrived." The alien commander's voice grew quieter. "Their leader, a female named President Carol Washington, sent us a message. She said, 'Welcome to Earth. We have been preparing for you.'" Veles felt a small chill. Something in Zextheri's voice suggested this was not empty boasting. "We laughed," Zextheri continued. "What could these young species do against the might of the Kytherian Empire? So we began the standard attack. Orbital bombardment first. We hit their military bases, their government buildings, their spaceports." "Standard procedure," Veleneus agreed. "Yes. But the humans did not respond the way other species do. Most races try to surrender after the first bombardment. They send desperate messages begging for mercy. But not the humans." Zextheri stood up suddenly and walked to the small window. Outside, ships from dozens of species flew peacefully through space. The Galactic Council kept order here. But Earth was far away from such civilized places. "What did the humans do?" Veleneus asked. "They sent us a single message back. It was from their military commander, a male named General Kevin Brooks." "Do you know what he said?" Veleneus shook his head. "He said, 'Is that all you got?' Then he laughed." The investigator frowned. That seemed like foolish bravado from a doomed species. Zextheri returned to his chair. "We thought the same thing. So we began landing our troops. The first waves went down to their major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. We expected quick victories. And the humans were ready. Not just their soldiers, but everyone. Old people, young people, even their children. They all fought us." Veleneus looked confused. "Children? But that is against all civilized rules of war. The humans do not follow civilized rules." Zextheri's voice became very quiet. "That was the first thing we learned about them. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us." The alien commander began to pace around the small room. "In the city called New York, we landed 10,000 warriors. We had battlesuits, plasma weapons, shield generators. The humans had simple projectile weapons and explosive devices. Projectile weapons? Wellness was surprised. How primitive. That is what we thought. Until we saw what they did with them. Zextheri stopped pacing and stared at his interrogator. A human female named Captain Lisa Hayes led their defense. She was small, maybe half my size. But she looked at our warriors like we were insects that needed to be stepped on. One female against 10,000 Kytherian soldiers? Not just her. All of them looked at us that way. Like we were the ones who should be afraid. Wellness was beginning to feel uncomfortable. The way Zextheri spoke about these humans did not sound like a defeated enemy describing their conquerors. It sounded like prey describing a predator. "What happened in the battle?" he asked. Zextheri sat down heavily. "We advanced through their streets in formation. Standard urban warfare tactics. We expected them to retreat, to hide, to beg. Instead, they came at us from everywhere." The alien's voice grew distant again. From windows, from sewers, from rooftops. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was how they fought. "Explain." "They did not try to survive. Do you understand? Every other species we have conquered, they fight to live. They retreat when hurt. They surrender when beaten. But not humans." Zextheri looked directly at Wellness. "Humans fight to kill, not to live. A human soldier with a mortal wound will use his last breath to kill one more enemy. A human female with a broken spine will crawl toward you with a grenade in her hand." The investigator felt his skin grow cold. "That sounds like madness." "Yes," Zextheri agreed. "That is exactly what it is. Humans are insane. And that makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Thus looked at his notes. They seemed inadequate to capture what he was hearing. "Continue your report, Commander." By the end of the first day, we had taken their cities. But we had lost 30% of our troops. 30%. Against a species that barely had space flight. Zextheri's voice rose with remembered shock. "And the humans we captured, they did not act like prisoners. They smiled at us. They told us we had made a terrible mistake." "What did they mean?" The Kytherian commander looked out the window again. "We would find out soon enough. The real war had not even started yet." Investigator Wellness noticed that Zextheri's hands were shaking more now. The alien commander stared at the table as he continued his story. "The second day is when we learned the truth about humans," Zextheri said. "We thought taking their cities meant we had won. We were wrong." "What changed?" Wellness asked. "Everything. The humans we thought were beaten began to hunt us." Zextheri stood up and walked to the corner of the room. He seemed to be avoiding the window now. "Do you know what guerrilla warfare is, investigator?" "I have heard the term. Small groups attacking larger forces, then disappearing." "Yes, but human guerrilla warfare is different. Most species use it to slow down an enemy. Humans use it to drive their enemies insane." Wellness made more notes. "Explain what you mean." A human named Sergeant Alex Turner led one of their resistance groups. He was a small male, maybe 40 years old. He looked harmless. But he killed more of my warriors than entire enemy fleets had done in other wars. Zextheri's voice became very quiet. "Turner and his team would attack our patrols, but they did not just kill us. They left messages. Messages. Written in Kytherian blood. They told us exactly how they were going to kill the next patrol. And then they would do exactly what they promised." The investigator felt sick. "That sounds like psychological warfare." "It was worse than that. They turned our own dead against us. When we found the bodies of our soldiers, they were rigged to explode when we tried to collect them. The humans had turned our funeral rites into traps." Zextheri returned to his chair but did not sit down. "But even that was not the worst part. The worst part was what they did to our wounded." Wellness did not want to ask, but he had to know. "What did they do?" "In most wars, medics are safe. It is a rule across all civilized species. You do not attack those who help the wounded. But humans do not follow civilized rules. The alien commander's voice shook. They would wound our soldiers, then wait for medics to come help. When our medics got close, the wounded soldier would explode. The humans had somehow turned our own people into bombs. How is that possible? We never found out. But it happened again and again. Soon, our medics were afraid to help anyone. Our wounded died because we could not trust that they were really our soldiers anymore. Veleneus wrote quickly, trying to capture the horror in Zextheri's voice. What else did these resistance fighters do? They learned our language. They studied our tactics. But most terrifying, they learned our fears. Zextheri finally sat down, but he kept looking around the room like something might attack him. Kytherians are afraid of certain sounds. High-pitched noises that remind us of our natural predators from our home world. The humans discovered this and began using sonic weapons. Sonic weapons. They would play recordings that made us panic. Ancient fear responses that we could not control. Our bravest warriors would curl up like frightened children when they heard those sounds. The alien commander covered his face with his hands. A human female named Dr. Maya Patel led their science teams. She had been a civilian before the war. A teacher, I think. But when we invaded, she became something else. What did she become? A monster who wore the face of a healer. Dr. Patel and her team captured some of our soldiers. They studied us like laboratory animals. They learned how our bodies worked, how our minds worked, and then they used that knowledge to create new weapons. Veleneus felt cold. What kind of weapons? Chemical weapons that made our shells dissolve slowly. Biological weapons that attacked only Kytherian DNA. Psychological weapons that drove our soldiers mad. Zextheri looked up at his interrogator. Do you understand what this means? In just days, human civilians had become weapons researchers. Teachers and doctors and farmers had turned into military scientists. But surely your forces adapted to these tactics? The alien commander made that sound that was not quite laughter again. We tried. But the humans adapted faster. Every time we changed our strategy, they were already ahead of us. How? Because they think differently than any species we had ever fought. Most races have military leaders who plan battles. Humans have something they call total war. Every human becomes part of their war machine. Zextheri stood up again and began pacing. Their children gathered intelligence. Their elderly people made weapons. Their scientists worked day and night to create new ways to kill us. What about their government? Surely they tried to negotiate. Their President Washington sent us one message during the second week. She said, "You came here to conquer us. Now you get to learn why that was a mistake." Thus looked at his notes. The story seemed impossible, but Zextheri's fear was real. By the end of the second week, we had lost half our ground forces, the alien commander continued. Not in big battles, but in small attacks. A patrol here, a supply convoy there. The humans were eating our army one bite at a time. What did your commanders do? General Krikstar ordered us to be more aggressive. We began destroying human cities completely. We thought that would break their spirit. Zextheri stopped pacing and stared at the wall. We were wrong again. Destroying their cities only made them angry. Angry? Before, they fought us with tactics and planning. After we destroyed their cities, they fought us with rage. Pure, focused hatred that burned like a star. The alien commander's voice became very quiet. A human named Colonel Ben Murphy led their ground forces in the city called Chicago. We had bombed most of the city, but he and his soldiers were still fighting. How many soldiers did he have left? Maybe 200. We had 5,000 warriors attacking their position. It should have been easy. Veles waited for him to continue. Colonel Murphy sent us a message before we attacked. He said, "Come and take it." Then he laughed. And we attacked. It took us 6 hours to overrun their position. 6 hours to defeat 200 humans. And when we finally broke through their defenses, do you know what we found? Veles shook his head. Bodies. Human bodies everywhere. But every single human had died fighting. Not one had surrendered. Not one had run away. They had fought until they were all dead. Zexthery sat down heavily. And in the center of their position, we found Colonel Murphy. He was still alive, barely. He had 17 wounds that should have killed him, but he was still holding a weapon. What did he say? He looked at me with these human eyes, and he smiled. Then he said, "This is just the beginning." And then he pulled the pin from a grenade. The room was very quiet for a moment. By the third week, Zexthery continued, our soldiers were afraid to leave their ships. The humans had turned their entire planet into a weapon aimed at us. Velis looked at his trembling hands. But surely you still had superior technology? Zexthery's eyes met his. That is what we thought. Until we learned that humans do not just use technology. They become technology. Velis noticed that Zexthery would not look directly at him anymore. The alien commander kept staring at his hands as if they were covered in blood. The third week changed everything, Zexthery said. His voice was barely above a whisper. That is when we learned that humans are not just fighters. They are learners. What do you mean by learners? They took our weapons, our technology, our ships, and in days they understood how everything worked. But understanding was not enough for them. They made our technology better. Zexthery finally looked up, and Velis saw pure terror in the alien's compound eyes. A human named Captain Ryan Clark captured one of our battle cruisers. The ship was damaged, most of the crew was dead. We thought it was worthless. What did Captain Clark do with it? In 5 days, he and his engineers had not only repaired it, they had improved it. They made our own ship more dangerous than when we built it. Velis felt confused. How is that possible? Your species has been building ships for thousands of years. That is what we thought too. But humans do not think like us. When we see technology, we use it the way it was designed. When humans see technology, they ask, how can we make this into a weapon? Zexthery stood up and walked to the far corner of the room. Captain Clark used our own ship against us. But he did not just attack our fleet. He used it to board other ships and capture more technology. Did you try to stop him? Of course we tried. Admiral Vex Nor sent 3 battle groups to destroy the stolen ship. Do you know what happened? Velis waited. Captain Clark had filled the ship with nuclear weapons. When our ships got close, he exploded it. The blast destroyed all 3 battle groups and damaged 12 other ships. The investigator felt sick. He killed himself just to damage your fleet. Yes. And while he was dying in that explosion, he was laughing. Our sensors picked up his final transmission. He was laughing and saying, "Worth it." Zexthery began pacing again. That is when we realized the terrible truth about humans. They are not afraid of death. They welcome it if it helps them kill more enemies. Surely not all humans think this way. All of them. Every single one. Zexthery's voice rose with remembered horror. Their pilots, their soldiers, their scientists. They all had the same insane willingness to die. The alien commander stopped pacing and stared at the ceiling. Commander Nina Rodriguez was one of their fighter pilots. Her ship was damaged, her weapons were gone. She should have retreated. What did she do instead? She flew her ship directly into one of our dreadnoughts. A tiny fighter craft against a ship that was 1,000 times larger. The impact should not have done any damage. Velis waited for the rest of the story. But Rodriguez had loaded her ship with human explosives. When she hit us, the blast went through our hull and destroyed the main reactor. We lost a dreadnought to a single fighter pilot who was willing to die. Zexthery sat down and put his head in his hands. And as she was dying, she was singing. Our communications picked up her voice. She was singing some human song about going home. The investigator tried to write, but his hands were shaking too much. What happened next? The human scientists became involved. That was when the real nightmare began. Scientists. But scientists are non-combatants. They should have been protected under galactic law. Zextheri looked at him with something that might have been pity. Human scientists do not follow galactic law. They follow human law. And human law says that when someone invades your home, you kill them with whatever you have. The alien commander's voice became very quiet. Dr. Maya Patel and her team had been studying our captured soldiers. They learned how our bodies worked, how our minds worked, how our species reproduced. Why would they need to know about reproduction? Because they were not just trying to win a war. They were trying to make sure we could never threaten them again. Veles felt ice in his blood. What did they create? Weapons designed to attack Kytherian biology specifically. Chemical weapons that would kill only us. Biological weapons that would make our eggs sterile. They were planning to make our entire species extinct. The investigator could not write anymore. His hands were shaking too hard. But that was not the worst thing, Zextheri continued. The worst thing was how they tested these weapons. How? On our prisoners. They would take Kytherian soldiers and test different chemicals on them. They would record everything. How long it took to kill us. How much pain we felt. Whether we stayed conscious until the end. Zextheri stood up suddenly. And while they were doing this, they would ask us questions. About our home world. About our families. About how many eggs our females laid each season. They were gathering intelligence. No. They were gathering targeting data. The room was silent for a long moment. By the fourth week, our soldiers were terrified, Zextheri continued. Not just of dying, but of being captured. Death was better than falling into human hands. What about your fleet in orbit? Surely you could have simply destroyed the planet. Zextheri made that horrible not-quite-laugh sound again. We tried. Admiral Kexran ordered a full planetary bombardment. Every ship, every weapon. We were going to burn their world to ash. What stopped you? The humans did. Veles looked confused. How could they stop an orbital bombardment? They had been building ships. In the middle of fighting a ground war, they were building a space fleet. In 1 month, they went from having a few primitive vessels to having a navy that could challenge us. That is impossible. That is what we said. Until we saw it with our own eyes. Zextheri walked to the window and stared out at the peaceful ships. Their Admiral Pete Henderson led their new fleet. 50 ships that looked like nothing we had ever seen. What made them different? They were not built for exploration or trade like most ships. They were built for one purpose only, to kill other ships. The alien commander turned back to face his interrogator. And they were very good at killing. What happened in the space battle? Battle? Zextheri's voice was hollow. There was no battle. There was only slaughter. Veles waited, afraid to ask for details. The human ships moved like living things. They attacked from all directions at once. And their weapons. Zextheri shuddered. Their weapons were designed to cause maximum pain before death. They could have simply destroyed your ships quickly? Yes. But they chose not to. They wanted us to suffer. They wanted us to know that we were being hunted by predators. The alien commander sat down one more time. In 6 hours, we lost half our fleet. The survivors were running like frightened animals. Is that when you retreated? No. We tried one more attack. One final push to salvage something from this disaster. Zextheri looked directly at Veles, and the investigator saw madness lurking in the alien's eyes. That is when we learned the final truth about humans. They had been holding back. Investigator Veles realized his own hands were shaking now. Zextheri sat across from him, but the alien commander seemed to be looking at something far away. Something terrible. The final attack, Veles said quietly. Tell me what happened. Zextheri was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice sounded like it came from a grave. We gathered what was left of our forces. 23 ships out of the hundreds we had brought. Admiral Kexran was dead. Most of our commanders were dead. But we had one last plan. What plan? We would ram our ships into their planet. If we could not conquer Earth, we would destroy it. Take the humans with us. Veles waited, but he already knew this plan had failed. We charged their world at full speed. Our remaining ships locked together in formation. We were ready to die, but we would make sure the humans died too. What stopped you? Zextheri looked at him with hollow eyes. Nothing stopped us. We hit their planet exactly as planned. The investigator felt confused. But Earth still exists. The humans are still alive. Yes. Because we learned the final truth about them. The humans had been playing with us the entire time. Playing? They could have destroyed our entire invasion force on the first day. They had weapons we never saw. Technology we never imagined. Ships that could have crushed our fleet like insects. Veles felt cold spreading through his body. Why did they not use these weapons? Because they were studying us. Learning about us. They used our invasion as a training exercise. Zextheri stood up and walked to the wall. He pressed his hands against it like he was trying to push through. When our ships hit their planet's atmosphere, their real defenses activated. What defenses? Energy shields that covered their entire world. Weapons that could destroy matter at the atomic level. Fighters that moved faster than light itself. The alien commander turned around. In 30 seconds, they destroyed what was left of our fleet. But they did not kill us quickly. They disabled our ships first. Trapped us in space where we could not move or fight. Then what? Admiral Pete Henderson contacted us personally. He appeared on our communication screens and smiled. Zextheri's voice became barely audible. He thanked us for the training exercise. He said his people had learned much about modern space warfare. Then he made us an offer. Veles did not want to ask, but he had to know. What offer? We could surrender and leave their system immediately. In exchange, they would let us live. That sounds reasonable. No. You do not understand. He was not offering to let our invasion force live. He was offering to let our entire species live. The investigator felt ice in his veins. What do you mean? Zextheri walked back to the table and sat down. Admiral Henderson showed us detailed plans for attacking every Kytherian world. He knew the location of our home planet, our colonies, our military bases, everything. How could they know these things? They had been tracking our communications since the first day. They had broken our codes, learned our language, mapped our entire empire. While we were fighting on their planet, they were preparing to destroy our civilization. Veles could barely write. His notes looked like the scribblings of a madman. The Admiral explained their plan very calmly, Zextheri continued. They would send small fleets to each of our worlds. They would not try to conquer us. They would simply kill us all. Genocide. Complete extinction. They had calculated exactly how many ships they would need. How long it would take. How many humans would die in the process. And they were prepared to pay that price. The alien commander's voice was hollow. Admiral Henderson said they had learned an important lesson from our invasion. He said, when someone tries to destroy you, you do not defeat them. You erase them from existence so they can never try again. But they let you go. They honored their offer. Yes. But only after they made sure we understood what we had escaped. Zextheri looked directly at his interrogator. They showed us their weapons. Planet killers that could crack worlds in half. Biological weapons that would make our atmosphere unbreathable. Nanomachines that would eat our technology while we watched. Why show you these things? To make sure we would never come back. To make sure we would warn others. The alien commander stood up one final time. Before they let us leave, President Washington herself spoke to us. She was very polite. Very friendly. She welcomed us to the galaxy and hoped we would visit again someday. That does not sound threatening. She said it while standing in front of a display showing our home world. And on that display were targeting markers for 1,000 different weapons. Veles felt sick. The president explained that humans do not like war. She said they prefer peace and friendship. But she also said that anyone who attacks humanity learns an important truth. What truth? That humans are very, very good at killing things that threaten them. Zextheri sat down for the last time. She told us that Earth's defenses were now watching every system within 500 light years. Any hostile fleet that came near human space would be destroyed before it could attack. And if someone did attack, then humanity would respond with what she called total warfare. Not just against the attackers, but against their entire species. The room was very quiet. As we were leaving, Zextheri continued, Admiral Henderson sent us one final message. He said, "Thank you for helping us prepare for the next invasion. We will be ready." Velas looked at his notes. They told a story that seemed impossible, but he knew it was true. He could see the truth in Zextheri's broken spirit. "Commander," he said quietly, "what do you think this means for the galaxy?" Zextheri looked at him with empty eyes. "It means we found them too late." "Found who?" "The apex predators. Every galaxy has them. The species that sits at the top of the food chain. The ones that all other species fear." The alien commander's voice was barely a whisper. "We always wondered who the apex predators were in this galaxy. Now we know. The humans." "Yes. And they are just getting started." Velaneus set down his writing tool. His hands were shaking too much to continue. "Investigator," Zextheri said, "I have one final piece of evidence for you." "What evidence?" The alien commander reached into his armor and pulled out a small device. "This is a human communication device. A gift from Admiral Henderson." "What does it say?" Zextheri activated the device. President Washington's voice filled the room, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Greetings to the Galactic Council. We are humanity. We look forward to meeting you and joining your peaceful community. Please know that Earth welcomes all friendly visitors. We hope to build lasting friendships across the stars." The message ended with soft human music. Velas stared at the device. "That sounds like a diplomatic greeting." "Yes," Zextheri agreed. "But listen to what she does not say." The investigator thought for a moment. "She does not say what happens to unfriendly visitors." "Exactly. She does not need to say it. Because now everyone knows." Zextheri stood up and walked toward the door. "My report is finished, investigator. Do with it what you will." "Where are you going?" "Home. To warn my people to never, ever go near human space again." As the door closed behind the broken alien commander, Velaneus sat alone with his notes. Outside the window, peaceful ships continued their journeys across the galaxy. But somewhere among those stars, humanity was watching, learning, preparing. And Velaneus knew that the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the interrogation ended, investigator Velaneus sat in the Galactic Council chambers. Around him, representatives from 100 different species waited in their seats. The great dome above them showed the peaceful stars, but Velaneus could no longer look at them the same way. Council Speaker Mordax called the session to order. His ancient voice echoed through the chamber. "We are here to discuss the report from investigator Velaneus. The failed Kytherian invasion of the system known as Sol." Velaneus stood up slowly. His hand still shook when he thought about Zextheri's story. "Honored council members, I must warn you that this report is unlike any I have filed before." "Proceed, investigator," the speaker said. "The species known as humanity is not what they appear to be. They are far more dangerous than any threat we have faced in 1,000 years." Murmurs filled the chamber. Many council members looked confused. The humans had sent friendly messages to the council. They seemed like a young species eager to join the galactic community. Representative Kexval from the Altarian Republic stood up. "Investigator, we have received communications from this human species. They speak of peace and friendship. How can they be dangerous?" Velaneus activated his data display. Images from the Kytherian invasion appeared in the air above the chamber. Destroyed ships. Ruined cities. The faces of traumatized alien soldiers. "The Kytherian Empire sent 2 million warriors to conquer Earth," Velaneus said. "Only 50,000 survived. and those survivors are broken in ways that medicine cannot heal. Another representative spoke up. Perhaps the Kytherians simply underestimated their enemy. Many invasions fail due to poor planning. No, Velnus replied. This was different. The humans did not simply defeat the invasion. They used it as a learning experience. The chamber grew quiet. Humans study war the way we study art or music. The